The wind howled through the cracked window panes of the Blue Moon Diner, a weathered little place tucked away off Route 79. It was past midnight, and only two booths were occupied, a pair of truckers hunched over steaming coffee, and an old man, asleep in the corner with his coat draped over his head. Skye stood behind the counter, absently wiping down the same spot for the fourth time. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting a sickly yellow glow across the scuffed linoleum floors. Outside, sleet began to pelt the pavement like frozen tears from the sky. She glanced at the clock. 12:38 a.m. The graveyard shift was always quiet this time of night, but tonight felt heavier somehow, like the silence was sitting on her chest. Her stomach growled softly. She hadn't eaten since a leftover muffin at noon, but that was fine. She was used to hunger. Her paycheck had vanished into rent and overdue bills the moment it landed. Her fridge at home contained exactly half a D: lemon, a cracked egg, and a jar of peanut butter. Her phone had been suspended 2 days ago, and the electric company had sent a final notice. She had exactly $23.47 in her apron, her tips for the night. And still, she smiled at every customer. She refilled coffee before they asked. She listened to old men rant about politics and heartbroken teens whisper about breakups. It was survival, and survival required grace. The bell above the diner door jingled softly. Cold wind swept inside. Skye looked up and froze. A man stood just outside the glass window, staring in. He wore layers of torn, mismatched clothing. His coat was at least 2 sizes too big, and the hem of his pants was shredded at the bottom. His beard was unkempt, streaked with gray. His eyes, sunken and tired, met Skye's through the frosty pane. He didn't step inside. He didn't wave. He just stood there, shivering in silence. Skye turned to her co-worker, Lana, a woman in her early 30s with dark eyeliner and a perpetual cigarette behind her ear. "That guy's been out there for 15 minutes, Skye whispered. "Don't even think about it," Lana replied, barely looking up from her crossword. "He's probably just casing the place or looking for handouts. You can't help everybody." Skye hesitated. "I'm not trying to help everybody," she said softly. "Just someone." She walked toward the door, pulling her cardigan tighter around her. The moment she stepped outside, the wind slapped her face and icy rain trickled down her neck. "Sir?" she said gently. The man flinched as if her voice startled him. "I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "Just needed to warm up for a second. I'll go." Skye shook her head. "No, it's okay. I wanted to ask if you were hungry." The man looked at her with disbelief, as though her words were a foreign language. I haven't eaten in a couple days," he said. "But I'm not asking for handouts. I used to work, you know. I just had a string of bad luck. I'm trying to find a shelter, but they're all full tonight." Skye glanced back into the diner. Lana was watching from the counter, shaking her head. She reached into her apron and pulled out the crumpled $20 bill. It was all she had. "I know it's not much," she said, pressing it into his trembling hand. "But there's a Waffle House down the road that's open all night. Please, go get a hot meal, something with eggs." The man stared at the bill like it was made of gold. "Miss, I don't know what to say. Just eat something warm," she said, forcing a smile, and try to stay dry. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. His lips quivered. "No one's looked me in the eye for days," he whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." Before Skye could respond, he reached out and gently touched her wrist. A brief, grateful gesture. And then he turned and walked away into the rain, his shoulders hunched against the wind. Skye stood there for a moment, heart pounding, watching him vanish into the darkness. Then she went back inside, the door closing with a soft chime behind her. Lana snorted. "You really gave him your last 20? Skye nodded, suddenly feeling foolish. You know that guy's probably gonna spend it on booze, right? Maybe, Skye replied, peeling off her wet cardigan. But maybe not. Maybe tonight he just wants to feel human again. Lana rolled her eyes and went back to her crossword. Skye returned to the counter, sat down on the spinning stool, and stared at her hands. The rain continued to fall outside. The truckers paid and left. The man in the corner woke and shuffled out without a word. By 2:00 a.m., the diner was empty again, but something in the air had shifted. Skye walked home in the cold, pulling her hoodie tight. She lived in a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. The heater rattled and the floor creaked when she stepped inside. She tossed her apron on the couch and sat down heavily. She should have kept the money, she knew that, but there was something about the man's eyes, like he was holding on by a thread, and for one fleeting moment, she had been the one thing, standing between him and despair. She didn't regret it, not yet. But the hunger in her belly and the fear in her chest were starting to whisper otherwise. She curled up on the couch beneath a thrift store blanket and let her eyes close. She had no idea that someone had been watching, from a black car parked across the street. A man in a tailored coat with sharp features and colder eyes. He had seen the exchange, the $20 bill, the handshake, the tears. He had taken a photo, and he was already dialing a number. The next morning, Skye showed up at the diner just before 8 a.m., her hair tied back in a messy bun, her shoes soaked from a broken puddle on the way in. Lana greeted her with a grunt and a donut. "You're on coffee duty," she said, already lighting her cigarette. Skye went about her routine, moving like muscle memory. Stack the mugs, check the condiments, flip the open sign, start the brew. The first customer was an elderly woman who ordered a slice of pie and asked for extra whipped cream. The second was a teenager late for school. Then, at exactly 8:42 a.m., the door opened. He walked in like he owned the place, tall, well-dressed, and completely out of place in the tired little diner. His coat was black, long and expensive. His shoes shined. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. He didn't smile. He simply walked to the far booth in the corner and sat down, placing his phone on the table with precision. Skye blinked. "Who comes to a truck stop diner dressed like they just stepped out of a GQ shoot?" She approached cautiously, notepad in hand. "Coffee?" she asked. He looked up at her with unnerving intensity. "I'll take it black," he said. "And I'd like to talk. About last night." Skye's heart skipped. "A beat? What do you mean? You gave a homeless man your last $20. Her blood ran cold. "How do you know that?" The man gave the faintest of smiles. "Because I saw you. Every second of it." Skye stood frozen, notepad trembling in her hand. The man across. The booth stirred his coffee with surgical precision, as if nothing he said was unusual. His dark eyes remained locked on hers, intense, unreadable, and far too calm. "You gave your last $20 to a homeless man last night," he repeated, "and I want to know why." Skye blinked. Her voice caught somewhere between panic and confusion. Who are you?" He set his spoon down slowly. "My name is Knox Harlan. You may not recognize it, but my family owns several companies in New York, San Diego, and Houston. My father was Knox Harlan Sr. He passed last year. I'm his only son." Skye still didn't move. "You were watching me?" she asked, unsure whether to be flattered, terrified, or both. Knox leaned back in the booth, steepling his fingers. "I had just left a business meeting and pulled into your parking lot to take a call. I saw the entire exchange through my windshield. You could have ignored him. Most people would have, but you didn't." She felt exposed, as if someone had cracked open a private moment and put it under a microscope. Knox continued, voice low and firm. "That man, his name is Walter. He used to work for my father as a chauffeur, loyal, quiet. He was there through my parents' divorce, through my mother's illness. When my father passed, I lost track of Walter. He slipped through the cracks. Sky's breath caught. You know him? Knox nodded. We thought he moved out of state. I never imagined I'd find him starving outside a roadside diner. Sky leaned against the edge of the booth, suddenly dizzy. Why are you telling me this? Knox reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, thick, heavy, and cream-colored. He slid it across the table. Sky stared at it. What is that? Open it. Her fingers hesitated before she broke the seal. Inside was a check. She nearly dropped it. $250,000. Signed. Verified. Real. Her knees buckled. She sat across from him without asking. I don't understand. Knox tilted his head slightly. This isn't a reward. This is recognition. Gratitude. You reminded me that not all kindness is transactional. But I didn't do it for money. I know. That's why this matters. The diner felt like it had stopped breathing. The world outside, the sleet, the traffic, the early morning truckers disappeared behind a curtain of disbelief. Sky clutched the check as if it might vanish. Her voice cracked. I've been living paycheck to paycheck since I was 17. My mom passed when I was 19 from a stroke. My dad left when I was 5. I've never had more than $500 to my name. This isn't real. Knox's voice softened. The first time his tone showed a crack of warmth. It's real, and it's yours. She looked up at him, her eyes suddenly brimming with confusion and quiet pain. Why me? Knox's expression grew more serious. I watched you from behind the glass last night. You didn't hesitate. You didn't expect thanks. You gave your last bill to someone who had even less. That's character. That's who people should be celebrating. He paused. There's something else. Sky's throat tightened. What? He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. It was a video. Fuzzy, shaky, but unmistakable. Sky. On the sidewalk, handing the $20 bill to Walter. Her voice was faint, but the audio was clear. Please, go get a hot meal. Something with eggs. The clip ended with her walking back inside, soaked by the rain. She looked up at him, speechless. I posted it anonymously last night, Knox said. Didn't include your name, just labeled it kindness at 2 a.m. Sky felt her stomach knot. Why would you do that? Knox's voice lowered. Because I wanted people to see what quiet heroism looks like. I expected maybe a few hundred views, he tapped again. The screen refreshed. 2 million views. 310,000 shares. Ducks a $20 angel trending on Twitter. Sky's hand flew to her mouth. Are you kidding me? Not even a little. She stared at the screen, her cheeks flushing. They're calling you an angel, a modern-day saint. Your diner's address is blowing up. Reporters are calling. Someone's offering to sponsor your college tuition. Sky shook her head violently. No, I didn't ask for this. I know, Knox said, but that's exactly why it's happening. A silence settled between them, deeper than the one that came before. After a long pause, Knox leaned forward. There's more. Sky glanced up warily. I'm in the early stages of launching a nationwide nonprofit foundation, focused on dignity-based outreach for the homeless. Real help. Not just handouts. I need someone to ground it. Someone. With a heart like yours. You want me to work for you? No, he said firmly. I want you to lead it. With me. She stared at him like he'd just spoken in tongues. Me? I'm a waitress. I don't have a degree. I've never run anything. He smiled for the first time. Wide. Sincere. But you see people, Sky. That's rarer than 1,000 resumes. Tears filled her eyes. This morning I wasn't sure if I could afford lunch. And now you're asking me to lead a foundation? Yes, because I trust the way you think, and because the world needs more people who give even when they have nothing left. The bell over the door jingled again. The diner filled quickly. 3, then 5, then 10 strangers came pouring in. One held up a phone pointing at Sky. That's her, someone whispered. That's the waitress from the video. Sky backed up, overwhelmed. Knox stood and gently guided her toward the kitchen door. Go out the back, he said quietly. Take a minute, breathe. She paused, trembling. But what now? He smiled again. Now, he said, opening the door. Now the world finally sees who you are. Sky sat alone in her apartment. The check lay untouched on her coffee table. Her phone, now reconnected thanks to Knox, buzzed endlessly. News stations were calling. Local politicians were tweeting about her. Food delivery companies were offering lifetime subscriptions. A college in Arizona had offered her a full scholarship, but none of it mattered as much as the knock on her door. When she opened it, Walter was standing there, clean-shaven, haircut, new coat, and tears in his eyes. You saved me, he whispered. She hugged him without a word, both of them trembling under the weight of a world they hadn't expected. You saved me too, she whispered back. The morning sun spilled through Sky's curtains like golden confetti, yet peace was nowhere to be found. Her apartment, once a quiet, dim sanctuary with second-hand furniture and an eternally buzzing fridge, now buzzed for different reasons. Her phone buzzed. Her email dinged. A camera crew had already been outside the diner at 6 a.m., hoping to catch her in uniform. Sky hadn't worn the apron in 3 days, and it terrified her. She clutched a cup of coffee, real Colombian roast, a gift from someone online. She hadn't paid for a meal, a cab ride, or even groceries since Knox's video went viral. Her face had been plastered across national news as the $20 angel. Children were drawing pictures of her. Talk shows wanted her. Influencers wanted to collab. A late-night host made a joke about marrying her. It all felt wrong, too fast, too loud. So when Knox called that morning and asked her to meet at his office downtown, she said yes. Not for the attention, but because something inside her ached for clarity. A compass. He met her at the rooftop of a sleek glass building, dressed not in a suit, but a gray sweater and jeans. No cameras, no assistants, just the wind, the skyline, and the man who had upended her life. Didn't expect this view, huh? He asked, handing her a cup of tea. I didn't expect any of it, she said quietly. Knox studied her face. It's a lot. It's everything. She looked out over the city, eyes misting. Knox, I was just a waitress. I'm still trying to understand why the world suddenly thinks I'm something more. He leaned on the railing beside her. You were never just anything, Sky. But you're right. This moment could crush you, or it could crown you. She glanced at him, curious. What do you mean? Knox reached into his coat and pulled out a navy blue folder. Inside, documents, blueprints, plans. The Sky Foundation for Human Dignity, he said simply. I filed the paperwork yesterday. Her hands trembled. You named it after me? You inspired it. It's yours, Sky. You lead. I'll fund. She stepped back. Knox, I don't even have a degree. I haven't done anything like this before. He closed the folder gently and looked her in the eyes. You changed someone's life with $20 and no audience. Imagine what you could do with 2 million and a global platform. Silence hung in the air like a held breath. I'm not asking you to become a billionaire or run for mayor, he continued. I'm asking you to keep being who you already are, but louder, braver, with resources. I'll surround you with people who know the system. You'll just show them how to use their hearts. Her heart pounded like thunder in her chest. She looked out over the city again. How many people do you think need someone to just see them? Knox didn't hesitate. Millions. She turned back to the folder. Her name, Sky Jameson, was etched on the top, a waitress's name, a woman who gave when she had nothing, a woman who was now being asked to lead. And in that moment, Sky made a choice. The first shelter opened in Pittsburgh, under her foundation's banner. a warm, modern space with showers, therapists, job training rooms, and on-site healthcare. It wasn't flashy, but it was dignified. That became Sky's obsession. Dignity. No one stood in lines. There were no metal cots or cold soup lines. Instead, every client was called by name, offered fresh bedding, and treated as family. The viral storm had long passed, but her movement didn't need the spotlight anymore. It had momentum, and Sky, still wearing her old sneakers, still sipping cheap gas station coffee, had become a force of nature. Walter now worked for the foundation as a peer liaison. He gave speeches at city halls and hugged every newcomer. At the shelters. Once discarded by society, now he stood tall beside Sky at every ribbon cutting. But it wasn't just Walter who'd been changed. Sky walked through a private gala being held in her honor. Knox stood at the bar, watching her work the room like she'd done 1,000 times. But this time, she wasn't taking orders. She was giving hope. She stopped beside a woman in a Navy business suit who wiped a tear away. "My daughter saw." "Your video last year," the woman said. "She was struggling with self-worth. Said if a stranger like you could make a difference, maybe she could too. She just got accepted to Yale." Sky hugged her without a word, then turned to see Knox. Approaching. "Still think I made the wrong call?" he teased. Sky laughed. "No, but I still get stage fright." "You get over it pretty quickly when you're handing out keys to brand new apartments." They both laughed. Then Knox's expression shifted, serious. "You ever regret it? Walking away from your old life?" Sky paused. "No," she said honestly. "But I still miss the quiet sometimes. The smell of bacon, the clatter of coffee mugs, being invisible." Knox nodded slowly. "You'll never be invisible again." She looked down for a second, then back up at him, her voice warm but clear. "Neither will Walter, or any of the others." Knox smiled, and, in that moment, the girl who had once been a ghost in a greasy diner, who gave her last $20 without hope of return, was now changing lives with the force of 1,000 voices behind her. Later that night, Sky stood in front of a small group of volunteers and staff, candles in their hands, gathered for a remembrance vigil outside the new Chicago shelter. She stepped up to the mic, voice soft but steady. "A year ago today, I was invisible. No one knew my name. I handed $20 to a man who looked forgotten, and I didn't expect anything in return. But what I've learned is this. One act of kindness is not small. It's a match, and it can light a fire that warms thousands." She looked out at the crowd, formerly homeless families, high school, volunteers, city officials. Don't underestimate your impact. You might be the only reason someone believes the world still cares. The crowd lit their candles. In the glow, Sky looked up at the stars, no longer alone, no longer small, and far in the distance, someone whispered, "She's the girl who gave $20 and changed the world."